post-Soviet states. So starting off with physical geography, I have a picture of the Volga River on the left. That is a river in Belarus, but it also goes throughout this region. Surrounding the river, you can find many industrial civilizations that have grown along it. And then on the right, we have the Caucasus Mountains, and this is in Georgia, or the picture is from Georgia, but Central Asia includes these mountains, and then also uplands, which were not pictured. So these are important to know because Russia and the post-Soviet states make up a large part of Eurasia, um, and so this makes it difficult for a government to control effectively, but it's important to know the physical geography because it is very large and varied. It's forgiving. The climate is unforgiving in some places, the cold making it impossible to live in some areas, which creates a low populated region. And then it also has huge oil and gas reserves, which has led to trade with Europe, but also corruption, which you will see. So Russia is usually considered very valuable because of its vast size, resources, and people. But um, that's what we have here. And then when we looked at figure 5.1, it kind of demonstrated again the many landforms. And we know that the Volga River is kind of the transportation, which is why all the industrial and agricultural centers are around it. The Ural Forest is another important part of early civilizations because it was felled to build and fuel industrial cities, and now it is a grass plains. And this is used for reindeer herding by indigenous peoples, mainly. And then the climate also comes to effect because um, it affects like the large wetlands in the West Siberian Plains, and drains towards into the Atlantic Ocean. So there's permafrost in this area in the northern half, and it is one of the world's largest oil and natural gas producer. But the harsh climate and permafrost make extraction difficult. And then, although south of the West Siberian Plains has grasslands, and to the west of that has um, the Ural or the Caucasus Mountains, people still are able to exchange plants, animals, technologies, animal breedings, and more um, from the Caucasus to the Tian Shan. And the climate and vegetation vary, but not as much as other regions because of the expanses of grasslands, northern forest, and tundra, which mainly makes up this region. Um, Siberia has some of the harshest climate in the world, especially in its northern part, and um, it supports because of this. It only supports like a few economic activities, such as the oil, gas, and mineral extractions. But then in western Siberian plain, people grow grain because limited crop agriculture in colder northern areas. Um, uh, um, the rainfall is blocked usually by the Caucasus Mountains, from the Indian Ocean. So much of the rainfall comes from storms in the Atlantic Ocean. Um, but this usually gets trapped in Europe. But a fair amount still reaches Ukraine, Belarus, European Russia, and the Caucasus republics, making this region very important to food production. And Central Asia also has some semi to arid climates, and the grasslands are used for irrigated commercial agriculture. This kind of goes back to this post-Soviet or to the pre-Soviet times, um, as well. And land transportation systems are really held back by climate because long, harsh winters build or makes it hard to build, but then the spring leaves construction sites and such. Um, And so this picture is one of a girl making naan, going into culture and history. So it is a bread cooked by many. Oh, it's a bread cooked by many throughout Central, South, and Southwest Asia, and it's considered sacred. It's served downside up. If it's considered, or if it's at each separate spot. If it's not served this way, then it's considered disrespectful. And religion has also changed a lot because in the original official Soviet ideology, atheism was encouraged and pretty much the standard. But new religion and practices are coming around again, and it's a major component of cultural revival. This is a marketplace in Asia, so it was along the Silk Road. Many of these little marketplaces would pop up, and they still continue today. And so, going into population, this region is experiencing a population stagnation. So, due to the rising level of participation of women in the workforce and overall poor living and housing standards, this causes a low birth rate and an aging population that are extreme, especially in middle-aged men. They're found to have high mortality rates due to like alcohol. And it's also a not very densely populated region. But in the areas that it is populated, it is highly populated. But it's very unevenly distributed, and many cities and rural regions shrink as the overall population distribution declines, and gender has really impacted this, as stated before. And the differences for men and women being impacted are very drastic, coming with economic and political changes during the 20th century, because women are slowly gaining more economic power, but on average, men have adversely experienced economic instability. And the Soviet Union used to gave strong incentives for women to work and become involved in politics, but in the post-Soviet era, gaps have been increasing between men and women employment rates and political representation. So this kind of shows how uneven the population is in areas. You can see some are sparsely populated, and in others there's a big amount of population. So the economic development has changed quite a bit, especially dealing with like the fall of the Soviet Union, when much kind of got changed with the changes. Unfortunately, changes were very corrupt, and you'll see this affect the transitions. So economic reforms and globalizations have changed patterns of development in this region. So many communist era industries closed, and jobs were lost, and public assets were sold to wealthy oligarchs. And this increased wealth disparity. And so now it's dependent on being a global exporter of global resources. However, this is kind of bad for greenhouse gases, which we'll touch on later. And after 1991, state-owned firms were closed or sold to private parties. And so this also increased wealth disparity. And then crude oil and natural gas emerged as the region's most lucrative export. And so this kind of affected a growing globalization rate and made a fossil fuel dependent economic development. And the Soviet Union was centrally excuse me. So we also with the market economy switch, this was very affected because they tried to switch markets like after the socialism to a like more free market democratic market switch, but it was very corrupt, so it didn't really lead to any benefits. And as I said earlier, the agriculture is affected by greenhouse gas, and it's struggling with like the climate, so not many regions are able to really support themselves other than this oil and gas economy. This picture kind of shows where agriculture activity, like how it varies throughout the region. You can see that grazing is pretty popular, and including rough grazing. And so now with the government and political development, so democratization was attempted after the fall of the Soviet Union, but because everyone was so corrupt, the wealth only got wealthier and the poor got poorer, and it's struggling to really like get a foot and get better, I guess. And so elections, that's seen a lot in them where like in for example Vladimir Putin, he kind of stayed in power for a long time. This was due to unfair elections, and especially right after and before the collapse of the Soviet Union, many conflicts were seen, especially in Central Asia and European Russia. And this image is one of a World War II soldier. Um, Many lives were lost in that war. And so greenhouse gas, this region is like the third largest producer of greenhouse gas, and it's only hurting themselves agriculturally. But they depend on it, or on fossil fuels, which produce these greenhouse gases. And so back during Soviet times, they would use the Soviet ideal to institute like different agriculture in regions that weren't naturally supporting. So they used irrigation on the Aral Sea, and it diminished very greatly. So that is why it is important to understand how socialism impacted that area. And so this whole presentation hopefully showed you how geography matters to a region, understanding how the climate affects where people are, and how government affects the development of an area kind of shows how the Soviet Union has developed as a region. Thank you.